Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about again. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete vs. Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m. Of course. Come on. We just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn. Do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what we're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy. Guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is really talked about enough. My guest today is the psychedelic yoga therapist, the one, the only, Miss Liz Shuler. Liz, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Liz, why don't you give everybody a little bit of rundown of your background?
Yeah, so I've had kind of a long run, done a few different things. I worked in residential treatment for a while with adolescents, meaning I was kind of there to help them with their everyday stuff and ended up doing like group mental health stuff. Then I went into my master's degree and ended up as a licensed clinical counselor. Moved abroad, ended up working in international schools, doing a little bit of private practice on the side. And then during COVID, went back for my PsyD and realized that psychedelics and yoga and all of these things that I've been doing for myself don't really fit in with what I've been doing with this clinical model, this really narrow focus. And I wanted to break out of that. So now I do psychedelic yoga therapy. It's not clinical. It's, a little more holistic. I don't diagnose people anymore. We just work on helping people feel better.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, I think, what I said to Liz before we hit record is that I like the fact that she's psychedelic in that area because I don't think people talk about that stuff enough. I think people have dabbled in it a little bit and they don't realize that the powerful things it can do. Like, they have the coffees and all these other different things that people can do and ingest in different ways. And in the right measures, man, you could have less side effects like we were talking about than even Liz stated Tylenol. If you think about it, you take too much of that, you could have a lot of problems. And that's just basic stuff. Like everybody's like, oh, you got a headache? Oh, here, just take a Tylenol. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. But I thought that was great. As soon as I seen that, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation.
Oh, that's great. I love to have this conversation. I geek out about it. So it's great to have somebody to talk to about.
Right. And I learn new things every day. And that's a great thing with the show is that everybody that comes on here teaches me something. So why don't you give us a little rundown about psychedelics? Just some things that people don't know about it. I know people know very little. So let's educate them. Let's come on. Tell them all about it.
Great. So we know psychedelics, I think, a lot in the United States from, the 60s. Flower people, free love. And that's where they kind of started in the Western zeitgeist, sort of. But they've been used by indigenous peoples for healing and for spiritual and religious and initiation rituals for, millennia. Like, we don't even know how long before history was recorded. They've been using these. So it's not something new. But for a lot of us, it is. So it was kind of in the 60s, this new thing that was coming up, like, oh, we found, in the jungle in Mexico, these mushrooms, right? Even though there's a long lineage of people using them before we went, the academia went in there and decided they were useful. And then, of course, because of the counterculture and the way that psychedelics were opening people up, and partially because of racism and a whole bunch of other stuff, capitalism, we started on the drug war, right? And the whole world kind of followed the US on that. And all of that got kind of squashed. Even like indigenous use has had a really hard time. A lot of, Native American folks and tribes have been trying to, reignite that with their own Native American churches and their rituals, and that's been even hard for them to do. And then sometime in, the early 2000s, researchers were like, hey, maybe we can try looking at this again. And ever since then, it's kind of been a movement. A lot of people call it the psychedelic renaissance. I like to call it more of a movement because it's not something that's coming back for a lot of people. It's something that's always been there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're extremely safe. We were talking about before we got on, there's a Lancet article that talks about harm to self and harm to others with certain drugs, and psilocybin, LSD, very, very bottom. There's no harm to others on that, right? Very, very little harm to self, usually no physical harm to self, right? So
Yeah.
They're safe. They are extremely powerful healing catalysts. Like, you've got to do the work. You have to be willing to, act on whatever comes up for you, but they're amazing at opening you up and showing you that door and giving you that motivation to do the things that you need to do to become more of who you need to be to feel better. And yeah.
The thing I think is what it goes to the same thing with mental health as well, is that we don't know enough, so we shun away from it. Just like like CBDs and all the other stuff they're using, doing great things with all these things. They're all natural,
Mm-hmm.
but they have such a negative effect. Well, it's hippies. So maybe the hippies were onto something. I'm sorry to say that, and
Yeah.
if I offend anybody when I say hippie, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm saying though that maybe they were onto something. Like these natural things that they're using versus all these big farm drugs that we're using now. It's like, do we really need 90% of them? We may not, honestly, if you really think about it. If you think about some of these things, these natural cures and things that we can use to help these people with these different problems, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but like we were talking about, that they start stacking things on one another, then it's like you've got a kaleidoscope of different, different side effects happening over there. It's like, let's spin the wheel of fortune, see which one we get today, and it's just like,
Right.
and if you guys listen to these commercials where they're talking about the side effects, some side effects include, and they go really low when they say it too. And it's like, well, you ever wonder why they're going so low? It's because if you hear what some of them are, it's like, wait, isn't this supposed to be already be curing this problem? But we're having more of these issues. Well, you're hearing voices aren't there. I'm like, well, technically this is antidepressant. Am I not supposed to be hearing these things? Like, what?
Yeah. 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 And like I was saying a little bit before, I have my own, autoimmune issues, trauma
Yeah.
related and triggered. And I was at that point where I was taking, a handful of things twice a day, and it just wasn't the same as, microdosing psilocybin and doing yoga and meditation. Like, really and
Yeah.
truly, like I can do all of the medications and not feel as good as doing what I'm doing now. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the key point there. So you're not feeling as good as you are now versus just piling all that crap in your system, because you don't even know what's in
yeah.
half of it. They only tell you
Yeah.
very little, and we don't even
Mm-hmm.
know if they're even being honest with us what they're putting in half that stuff there. But with with the mushrooms and other things you can add in there, what you're putting in there now. Now you're controlling the system now. And a lot of them don't like that because they can't control you now, because they can't just start giving you all this other crap. Oh, and now we can give them this too, and we can keep selling this and just keep stacking them up. And you're like,
Right.
yeah, I don't think so. Forget it. I'm good. Thanks, anyways. And yoga, I hear a lot of times too, comes up in a lot of our conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and meditation and all that different stuff. It's more common than ever now to hear these things when it comes to different mental health disorders and things like that. People with anxiety and things like that, help them focus their mind. People with ADHD and all that other great stuff like that, and too.
Yeah.
But I do love what you're doing though. I feel like you're
Thank
pushing
you.
and you're breaking your own stigma there, just trying to tell people that psychedelics have always been here, man. These
Yeah.
are the things that you all didn't want to hear, that just like big farms too busy spreading out misinformation,
Yep.
and you're here to just tell everybody, hey, listen up, hey, ever play Legend of Zelda? It's like that little fairy, hey, listen, you're just like that little voice telling people, hey, listen to me, I got something to tell you. This is all my research I've been doing. These are the things, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's great, honestly. I really do. I think you're
Thank
making
you.
headway in things, and I think you're
Thank you.
going the right direction. And I support it 100%, honestly.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's, I'm not 100% against science and pharmaceuticals and things like that. I think there's a place for things like that, but we've focused in on this very narrow way of knowing of
Yeah.
science, right? And I kind of use this metaphor of light. We have the
Hmm.
visible light spectrum, but that's just a tiny piece of all of what light is and what it can be. And that's kind of what science is. It's really great for the things that it does, but there are all these other experiences and ways of knowing and, things that relational energy, everything that goes on that we know happens, but it can't be explained by science and it just doesn't fit in there. And I think psychedelics are a huge piece of this, because when you take a psychedelic, sure, there's stuff that you can, measure in your brain. We know that it gives you extra neuroplasticity. We know that it connects parts of the brain. But then you also might meet, your dead grandmother. Or you might meet the spirit of ayahuasca, right? Mother ayahuasca. Or
there you
might
go.
see
Ayahuasca
aliens,
is what I was thinking of too.
Right? And you might have ego death where you die and you are no longer a distinct being. And what does that mean when you come back to this reality and science is like, well, aliens don't exist, right? Or you can't talk to your dead grandmother. Or, these experiences, we can't explain these, so it's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's part of our own human universal experience. And if it's helping you and, you've had this experience, then it's real for you. So why are we focusing just on this very narrow piece of it?
Because we're closed-minded. Like you said, we don't know it. So we deny that it even exists. Like, feeling energy around us. Like, I'm hypersensitive to energy. I talked to someone a couple episodes ago. I had an energy alchemist on and she came on and Melanie was great. She and I were discussing how I had these weird experiences I couldn't explain. Like I had these, it's just feelings. It's just like a sense of feeling. I joke and call people it's my spider sense, but but it's a feeling that you just can't explain to people. It's just like that too. And then, the whole thing is when it comes to spiritual too, is people start seeing things. And there was a great conversation. A gentleman I met the other day, Ed, his podcast does is paranormal. And they were talking about what if people back in the 60s and all that, right? They drink so much to try and forget things. Like maybe your parents actually saw something and then they were self-medicating to try and tell you. And then they tell you as a kid, you're crazy, like your imaginary friend. Oh, well, you have an imaginary friend. We don't think about these things from the aspect of that, they could really be what they're seeing. These kids could be seeing something. And then when you finally discover what it is, a lot of people still deny it. They're like, oh, no, that's just all fake. And I think a lot of it's mainstream media that starts filtering too much in, and then Wikipedia and all this and all that stuff, just all that different information out there. The internet's great. And at the same time, it's negative because there's so much out there you can see, but there's so much you can find, and you got to be able to filter through this stuff. And that's when it's great with people like you that have fact-based, things that you're putting out there that people can see. Like, hey, these are the actual things, And yet again, we go back to the little fairy voice. Hey, listen, and you're trying to get your voice out amongst so many other people making all these different statements. It's so muddled for people. And I think that's where we get lost is that, at the end of the day, it's you're trying to do something natural versus trying to pump these chemical based things that we don't even know what they're doing to us. And a lot of them have long-term effects that are just astronomically crazy. And we know it, but we still push it. But why? It's just makes no sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's because our whole, society and our whole paradigm has been built around that visible light spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And anything deviating from that has been seen as, pseudoscience, quackery, mysticism, whatever. When there's real valuable information there. And like you said, I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, right? If you need to take an
I'm not either, but I agree.
Right. But what I'm saying is if you need to take an antidepressant, take it to get yourself to that place where you can do the work. And then eventually you need to come down off of it. It shouldn't be a forever thing because we know that you go into withdrawals, coming off of antidepressants, if you've taken them for a long time, can mean that you end up having really crazy side effects like getting other diagnoses of bipolar disorder or things like that, when really it's just the withdrawal effect from the antidepressant. It's not an actual second thing. So you want to be discerning. And I think it's sad that we haven't told people that these things are a possibility, informed consent and making sure that people know what they're getting into before they start taking pharmaceuticals or even psychedelics, right? Making sure that I tell people that, they're super, super safe, but there are also things that can happen that, you might not be ready for, or if you have specific heart conditions or, blood pressure conditions, that might not be good for you to take MDMA, right? Things like that, making sure that we are giving really good informed consent so that people can make decisions for themselves that are based on what's going to be best for them.
Exactly. I think a lot of them when they're coming down from them, that's the problem. Bipolar seems to be the most misdiagnosed thing so far that I've noticed, that it's just like everything's bipolar. It's like, what is it really though? Because a lot of people say that BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, and bipolar line up a little bit side by side, but BPD is a little more extreme to like a lot of the other stuff they deal with. And I did some research when I started this show, and then I've learned so many things. I can't even tell you this. It's just crazy. Like the things you read are just like, whoa. And these people having to go through every day, it's like how? Like I question that sometimes, like how some of these people I meet, it's like, man, I thought my shit was bad. And then you meet somebody else that's worse, and you're just like, okay, well, never mind. You just blew my stuff out the water. Like you sank my battleship, basically. I'm gone. And I don't like how people jump to conclusions of things, like they get scared of things they don't know. And like I've done psychedelics before. I love the little gummy things; are great for certain things. My wife tries them too, and she likes them and stuff. And it helps with her. And I've learned a lot of this stuff from her a lot of times too, of different things to try. And and I think I don't think there's enough study going on, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. And it's like I said, it's great that your content's focused on that, because now we can start breaking that conversation open about, hey man, listen, there's other options out there now. Like traditional therapy isn't just the way to go, because everybody's afraid that, oh, they're going to start cramming pills down my throat. But you don't need it. Like there's holistic healing, there's spiritual healing, there's energy healing, there's sound healing. There's so many different things out there that you don't have to settle on the cookie cutter road that people are trying to send you on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I broke away from that, pretty rigid clinical focus. And I think it's really interesting to hear, I broke away from this clinical focus, and I don't really ascribe to diagnoses very much anymore. I had this really great professor when I was doing my master's degree, and she said, basically most of the DSM is going to boil down to trauma, right?
Yeah.
And the more research that I did, and the more stuff that I did in my, doctorate degree and things, the more I looked into it, the National Institute of Mental Health doesn't even use the DSM anymore for their research, right? It's just so far divorced even from this narrow focus that we have, that it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. And I don't know that labeling people, you are this, right, is really helpful. And I think that's, again, something that comes from psychedelics. When you go on a trip, or even like breath work and yoga, when you come into that place where you're feeling like you are part of the universe, you're not just a human being in whatever, country you're in, and you're, trying to make it through your day-to-day job, but you are connected to everything with this experience. You realize that label isn't necessarily as helpful as you thought it was, and it doesn't really encompass what's going on, right? That label is more about your biological whatever, or this box that somebody can put you in so that we can give you the right treatment, even though the right treatment isn't the same for everybody, even if they have the same diagnosis, right? So it's very difficult to, like, I use those terms because I think it's become super common for people to use diagnostic terms now, like ADHD, a major depressive disorder, BPD, like you were saying, bipolar disorder. I use those terms, but that's not really how I conceptualize what's going on anymore. I don't think about people as, their diagnosis. And I think that's really important.
Okay. Yeah. Real quick, Liz, I wanted to point out, Alan had made a comment here. Alan, I thank you so much for being commenting things. Alan, I've really been seeing a lot of his stuff popping up. He says, check out The State of Mind by actor Maurice Bernard. He's a huge mental health advocate. Thank you, Alan. I just wanted to make sure I said that. I know Liz was in the middle of saying something, so I didn't want to say nothing. But I agree with you, though. I just think that it's just, like, I think it's not really now to be labeled. I think they should use it as a baseline to know exactly what things you're dealing with. Like, you can narrow down your symptoms you're having. And I think that's the way we should start looking at it, instead of it owning it, saying like, I have it, I deal with it, is what people should be saying. Is a lot of people I've been hearing telling me lately, and things like that. These are the symptoms I'm dealing with that fall into this category. That way, you know how to attack the issue. Okay, well, these are the things we're looking to fix. So let's go that way, and it just is, like I said, it's just too much things going on. There's too many voices out there and not enough people listening to the right voices. And it's hard because, in a crowd of 1 million people, you got one person saying something. You're not going to hear that one person because they're going to get drowned out.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing about psychedelics, though, is that it works for almost everything,
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no need. I mean, when I say it works, like in the research, they call it transdiagnostic, right?
Yeah.
So far, they haven't found a diagnosis that it doesn't work for. It
Yeah.
also, and that's mental health. It also is helpful for autoimmune diseases, including multiple sclerosis, right? Which is a really, really difficult one to treat, but it's been
Definitely.
psychedelics have been helpful for that. I use it for my own autoimmune stuff, virus like induced autoimmune stuff, COVID, long COVID, it's been really helpful for at this point. So when we look at this non-dualistically, right, we're not going to have a mental health disease and a physical health disease. We are talking about our whole body, how that all interacts together. That's how psychedelics heal.
Yeah.
They work on, the entire being rather than just one piece here and there. And I think that's why I don't really ascribe to like the diagnosis anymore when it comes to mental health, because it doesn't really matter in one way, right? It doesn't matter because if you are using these tools to help, if you're using yoga, if you're using psychedelics, it's going to help one way or another.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah, no, I get you completely on that one. That makes sense. So, I mean, I think now, like, that's the way we should be looking at it, though. It's like, what are you falling up? What are you lining up with? Because how can I help you if I don't know what you're dealing with? That's cool. They use the word diagnosis, but here we don't do that. Liz is like, we don't do that kind of stuff, your guy. We just want to know what it is you're dealing with so I can solve these problems for you. And I like that though, because like I said, the natural of it is that it's something natural. It's not chemically just covered up with stuff, and then you're just putting all this crap, and then you feel like crap. And like I know they have like the coffees and all the other stuff nowadays. They have so many things these days. It's so great. I have a friend of mine, she uses it. Shout out to my buddy Kay, by the way. She's the one that it was promoting this coffee that's like a mushroom coffee, and she loves it.
Yeah.
She's things like that. And I think people start hearing these things and they're like, oh, I don't know what it's gonna do. I'm like, it depends on the dose. And that's why I tell people when I'm like, I do gummies and stuff. And like when I do them, it's like you gotta start low and work your way up, because you're not gonna know what's gonna work. You gotta get to that right level where you get where you want to be, basically. So do you want to be functional, or do you want to be just like you just want to escape reality and just kind of relax for a bit? You can get there. Trust me, they've got one for you. There's some high doses out there, but be careful when you start getting the high doses, because sometimes you're gonna start tripping out and things like that. And I think that's the negative side effect that people only focus on, is that, oh well, I'm gonna trip out. Not necessarily. When used right, you'll feel better, but it'll be naturally feel better. You won't feel as so much like all these other random side effects. Like I do the injections for Ozempic, as an example. And you see so many different people saying they're having all these different kind of issues and things like that. And it's just like, I get it, but I think a lot of people are using it for the wrong reasons, because they're all like, oh, well, now I want to lose weight. So hurry up, let me get the quick diet. Let me start. And it's like, that's not what it's used for. It's used for diabetes and things like there's other things it's used for. And if you use it right and you're not abusing it, you won't have these problems, but I understand people deal with side effects and things like that. But me personally, I'd rather go to a more natural to handle all my things and things like that too, because a lot of these side effects, if you start really reading your medications, it's just like one of my I can't have long exposure to sunlight. I'm like, what? I can't be out in the sun. Like, but then now you're telling me I can't get the sunlight's rays that I need. So now I got to supplement with a vitamin for this. That makes no sense. Like, you're telling me I can't be out in the sun. What did you put in there that's causing these problems?
Yeah. Yeah. And, not all psychedelics are natural. So I think LSD is plant derived, right? It comes from ergot mold, but it's synthetic. And
yeah,
I think also like DMT, right? We have DMT in our brains naturally, but we have to synthesize it or, get it from a toad, right?
It's funny you say that, because my wife and I were talking about it, and we were trying to figure out what it was that I was talking about. And I think it was the ashwagandha is the one that you mentioned it, and it clicked in my brain, because that's what me and her were talking about. I was telling her I was listening to this podcast, and Pauly Shore was on there talking about, hey, he had done a couple treatments, and he was describing it to everybody what it was like, and he played the video clip, and you could hear just the audio, because he's in this dark room, the sounds playing in the background, and he was describing it. And she had mentioned the toad thing. And I was like, no, I don't think it's a toad thing. I've never heard of that either. I was like, until you said that, I was like, wait a minute, that's what she mentioned. She said, oh, whatever it is, something to do with toads, right? I'm like, I don't think that's what it is.
No. Yeah. Ayahuasca is a mixture of vines from South America. It's a very old healing brew. It's used for a lot of different things indigenously, not just, a psychedelic trip and healing.
Yeah.
But yeah, ayahuasca is one sort of psychedelic.
Yeah.
5-MeO-DMT and bufo all sort of work on the DMT sort of thing that comes from a toad, the Sonoran Desert toad.
Yeah.
So, when you hear about people licking toads, don't do that.
Oh, that's why they're doing it. Okay.
That's not a safe way to do it, but yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, it depends on the dose. It depends on what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
It also depends on, the plant. There are plant medicines that don't have, the extreme hallucination, ego death sort of effects, but are still really great for, healing and can be entheogenic, looking at the divine, or have really good introspective properties. So like blue lotus is one that I use when I'm doing yoga that really helps me come into a place of, stillness and finding that inner wisdom. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different plants, a lot of different, extracts, things you can use that can be helpful plant medicines that are psychedelic, and it just depends on what you're looking for and what you need in that moment.
Yeah, that is the real point though. What exactly is what is it you're looking to either fix or looking to achieve at that point? And then you go from there. And I know I was visiting your website. I know it has like a lot of great stuff, guys. I got it all in the description down below. When you guys are done watching this, definitely go check it out, because she's got all this really cool stuff. She's even got a dosing guide. And maybe you could touch a little bit on that too, because I saw it. I didn't really play with it yet, but I seen you had the online dosing guide to help people out. So you want to give a little more explanation to people what that is exactly?
Yeah, so actually I have a microdosing guide, and in that guide, it has a table of like a few of the more common psychedelics and what the dosing is for a microdose, a mini dose, a museum dose, and then, a macrodose and a heroic dose. So just go through that. That was a lot. So microdosing is basically a very small dose, usually about 1/10 of a full macrodose.
Yeah.
That you take in, maybe every other day, every third day for 4 to 8 weeks. And that is not going to give you any sort of psychedelic hallucinogenic effects, right? You're probably not going to notice it for the first couple of weeks. And eventually you'll start to notice, oh, I'm more motivated, or, oh, I have more energy, or, oh, I'm a little bit happier, or I'm a little bit less stressed. So it's very, very subtle changes, but it's really helpful for autoimmune diseases, things like that, because it helps regulate your immune system. And having that consistent regulation is more helpful for some people than having just that big macro dose of, I'm going to reset everything, right?
Yeah.
So it just depends. A mini dose is a little bit more than a microdose. So you might start to feel like your colors might be more vibrant, right? Things might have a little bit of an aura around them, or, whatever, but it's not going to be like super big. A museum dose is a dose in between a mini dose and a macrodose where you're still functional, right? You shouldn't drive, like you shouldn't operate machinery, but you can walk around a museum and you can be functional in society and not, having ego death happening, but still have a little
what's
bit
up, Ed?
Different connection to what's going on around you. And then the macrodose is that full-on, hallucinogenic psychedelic trip where you are going to have experiences that I don't know, because everybody's different. Every plant is different. Every spirit of every, substance is different. So just depends on you and your relationship to the plant in that moment. But there are a lot of different effects that can happen. And then a heroic dose is like, it's going to shoot you into space. Again, we were talking about ego death,
It's
right?
going to be interstellar, guys. Get ready to see the orbit.
Yeah, that's where ego death tends to happen, right? Or these big like cosmic events happen. And that can be really destabilizing for some people, right? So yeah, it's
what kind of things would people need though the heroic dose for? Would that any like mental health related items that would make you want to do something like that?
I think the heroic dose is really great for getting out of your own way, right?
Okay.
So I think there are a lot of people that are afraid to lose control.
Yeah.
And I understand that because in a lot of people's lives, control has been what's kept them alive, right?
Yeah.
They can control certain things, and that has led them to survival, right? And that's why they're here today. But then once you get to a place where you don't have to do that anymore, it becomes no longer helpful for you. So, and again, that can be for many, many diagnoses, right?
Yeah,
That can be for
definitely.
anxiety, for depression, for, a lot of things. And when you really need to let go of that control, but you can't do it yourself, right? Because there's just this part of you that's like, no, if you do that, you will die. Like literally, you will die. You can't do this. So sometimes you just need to die, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you see that it's okay, and you allow that medicine to take control so that you don't have control anymore. And you come back and you're alive and everything's okay. And things might be different for you, and you might have to make some changes and, figure some things out, but it gives you that shift in perspective and that direction to go into, where before you just, you were so stuck in that control means survival.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you guys don't use the high heroic dose unless you're ready to go for rides, what Liz is saying, okay? Unless you want to go experience interstellar experience. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, but like you know what I mean? Because it's crazy because people, they'll play around it and then they'll go too much and then they'll start going, oh, well, I don't like it anymore. Well, yeah, because dude, you jumped the gun. You gotta ease into this thing because you don't know what that's gonna do to you. And like Liz just said, you don't know. It's gonna be different experiences for everybody. It goes same thing for anything you deal with. Same thing with
Mm-hmm.
mental health too. A lot of these diagnoses that people have, like it's different in all different people. That's the crazy thing if people don't understand. It's like just because you hear the words like schizophrenia doesn't mean that person you're talking to is going to be completely nuts. They may not have an extreme case of whatever it is, and that'll apply to
Mm-hmm.
anything. If you look like it, like BPD, the borderline personality disorder thing was like I've met a couple people with it, and each one of them tell me something different along the lines. So and that's the great thing about this show is that different people that come on with these things you can see
Yeah.
how people react differently. Like some people do have extreme cases, don't get me wrong, but other people don't have it as bad or it doesn't affect them in the same way it does, and that's the great thing
Right.
about us all being human is that we all experience things in a different way. But at the same time, we all can connect because it's like, hey, Liz or Pete or I have this whole thing. And we at least I know I'm not the only one out there, and that sense of not
Mm-hmm.
feeling alone is the greatest of all.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we are relational. This whole universe is relational, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's important to have community and have support and be a part of each other's worlds. That's going to be the most healing thing, of all. And
Yeah.
we know this not just from, all of this mysticism and, ancient wisdom, but we also know it from that neuroscience piece as well, because all of the research that's been done on psychotherapy shows that the majority of positive outcomes come from the relationship that you have with the person that you're working with,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it doesn't, the intervention that you're doing can change, right? You can be doing EMDR, or you can be doing CBT, or you can be doing whatever. But if that relationship isn't okay, this isn't going to work. And if that relationship is good, then it doesn't matter what you're doing over here, it's going to help, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important that we keep that in mind especially when we're doing psychedelics, right? Like I think it's fine to do psychedelics recreationally. If that's what you want to do, it's usually not very harmful. They're pretty safe. It's a different way of experiencing things, right? But don't do it alone.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. The key word in that sentence, don't do it alone because you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's going to happen if you're someone else is with you that's not going to participate. Make sure somebody's there to keep an eye on you because God knows what you're going to do next. If you go too high in that dose, you could just do God knows what could happen next. And
Yeah.
and we're not saying go ahead and just go do it, just go extreme on it. She's basically telling you to be safe about it when you're doing these things. Like in no way are we saying just go ahead, go jump to the heroic scale, man, and just go for a ride because you don't know what that ride's going to be like. You don't know what you're going to
Yep.
see.
Yep.
And
Yeah. And I've talked with people who have done that, right? Who've gone out to party and they're like, I just took as much MDMA as I could.
oh Jesus.
And then they were destabilized for 3 or 4 days, right? Like I didn't quite know what was reality and what wasn't. And I was like, yeah, you probably should have, gone a little bit slower, right? And that's the beauty of having somebody there with you, especially somebody who has experience with psychedelics, who has taken them themselves, who, helps other people move through this, is they can be like, okay, well, let's start you here. And then, especially for psilocybin, like mushrooms, it's really easy to be like an hour in, if you're like, I'm not really getting what I want. Okay, well, let's up your dose a little bit, right? Give you a little bump. And that way it's a lot less destabilizing. It feels safer, right? And that's important because you want to feel safe if you're trying to get any sort of therapeutic benefit out of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Even if you're trying to get like spiritual, right, or personal growth stuff, you don't want to go way off into a place where you don't feel safe and then come back and be like, I don't know what to do with my life anymore, right? We're trying to help you get to a place where it's better for you rather than worse. And sometimes bad trips, right?
Yeah.
Can be the most informative and the most healing, but you still want to be able to, when you come back down, you are safe. You have somebody there that's safe. You know what's going on,
Yeah, no, I get that. And that was going to lead me to my question for you is that, okay, so say where someone comes to see you, how does a session go with you though? Are you basically trying to figure out what dosage they need? Is it what you're doing there with them?
Yeah, so it depends. So if they're coming to me for like macrodosing, right?
Yeah.
Or heroic dosing. So I don't give medicine, right? In the Netherlands, which is close to me, I'm in Belgium right now.
Oh, okay.
We can do retreats and I can give you medication, right? But most of my work is online at this point, so I don't give anybody medication. But what we do for macrodosing is I have a few sessions before we take the dose so that we can talk about, okay, what is it that you were intending for this, right? What is your intention? Not your goal, because we're not looking for specific outcomes in psychedelic, because nobody's going to ever be able to guarantee you a specific outcome, right? But talk about an intention, like your intention could be, I want to be more open to life, right? How can I be more open to life? Something like that. Or I want to be able to be more in touch with my emotions. Something like that, right? Or tell me, I want psilocybin, the spirit of psilocybin, to tell me, whatever I need to hear right now. That's also good intention. And then either I facilitate the dose online if you have already had a psilocybin experience. If you're new, I direct you to like a trip sitter or a guide that can work with you in person. And then afterwards, we do integration sessions, which is the preparation and the integration are where a lot of the work happen. It's, psychedelics open the door. They give you the information and it's up to you what to do with that information, right? It's up to you to step through the door and start on that journey. So I work a lot with yoga. Like I said, I'm a yoga therapist, and I use that paradigm. So a lot of interplay with breath and body and meditation, a lot of shadow work.
Liz, real quick, you keep saying breath work. I have a guest that's coming on. I'm not sure exactly when, but he's an ex-Australian Special Forces. He was talking about that exact thing, and it's crazy because I keep hearing breath work all the time with people. Maybe you want to touch a little bit on it real fast, what that is for people, just so they know really quick so they get a reference of what you're referring to.
Yeah, breath work is a big kind of tent, but any sort of intervention where you're working with intentionally breathing is breath work. Right?
Okay.
So from yoga, there's stuff called pranayama. So you can do like fire breath, which is forcefully exhaling, and that heats you up and energizes you. There's also things like holotropic breath work, which basically brings you into a psychedelic state without having psychedelics, because we have that DMT naturally in our brain that we can kind of tap into.
Oh, okay.
So it's a broad spectrum, right? It can be from calming you down to energizing you to, taking you on a trip. So anything, like I said, anything where you are intentionally breathing, that is breath work.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I cut you off when you were saying shadow working. I do know a little bit about that. I had the 2-time international bestseller, Melissa Kim Porter, come on. She's been on twice already. She's supposed to come back again, but we'll talk about her next book she's working on. But she and I talked a little bit about shadow working too. So
yeah, and that's a big part, because I think psychedelics tend to show you the parts of yourself that you're afraid of or that you want to get rid of.
Yeah.
And it tends to invite you to, get to know them and accept them and work with them in a different way. So I think that's a huge part of integrating the psychedelic work, is finding those parts of yourself that you have cut off or that you have decided are too shameful or are not okay, and allowing them to be a part of yourself in a more holistic way, in a more compassionate way. So that's a lot of psychedelic work. And I think yoga helps with that a lot, because when we are just doing stuff in our minds, it's really hard for it to stick, if that makes sense. Like, it's easy to go into your bathroom and say to your mirror every day, I'm gonna, be productive, or whatever it is that your affirmation is, right? But then going and doing that every day is a little bit harder, right?
Yeah.
When we pull yoga into it, we pull our body into it, and we are using the other brains. So we have a heart brain and we have a gut brain, as well as our head brain. We're using all of that to start to change things, change habits, change our perspective without a whole lot of, we're doing breath work, asana, which is movement, and probably some meditation. And that is going to help you shift into things differently. Rather than just always talking about it or trying to think your way into it.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, everything you just said has got my brain firing. I'm like, dude, this is so interesting. I need to know more. So my question then is say someone wants to know more about psychedelics in general. I mean, obviously they can come to you. Are there any other resources you suggest they go check out? Any other people's work that they have that they've been doing some of this stuff? That way, hey, I know Liz has got some stuff, but what other stuff do you recommend they go check out if they're considering doing these kind of things?
Mm-hmm. James Fadiman is very, very big in the psychedelic space. He's got a couple of books that are really good. He's just come out with a microdosing book, which I haven't read yet, but I'm sure is going to be amazing. There are quite a few people. Tricycle Day is a newsletter that has a whole bunch of news about, psychedelic research and what's going on. And then also Psychedelics Today has a really good blog and podcast that I also listen to.
They have a podcast, huh? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'll definitely have to put that in the description down below. Like I said, I have your socials and stuff like that in there, and I'll get that other information. I'll have you send me that. You can just shoot it in an email to me, the other information, that stuff, because I'm going to plug it all in the description for people, guys. So in case you guys are listening to somewhere and you hear something Liz said that you want to go check out, like the podcast or these other things, I'm going to put it all in the description so you guys can find all this stuff or all that kind of stuff, I like I said, I'm fascinated. Believe I'm probably going to go check them out myself, because I'm just so fascinated about these things, because the more I learn, the more I want to know, because it's so cool to see just the things that people are doing at this point. And I'm all for more natural cures versus the drug stuff, just because I'm the guy that analyzes everything I get. My wife tells me stop reading some of the stuff sometimes, but I'm like, I'm reading because I want to know what the hell is in these things, because I'm watching those commercials and I'm listening for the low tone whisper. It's like, what are you saying down there that you don't want me to hear now? Hold on. And it's always, you always got to question a lot of that stuff, because it's like, you see all these really cool commercials and then it's like, whoa, some side effects are, you hear things aren't there. Sometimes you're seeing things aren't there. I'm like, wait, what, hold up. I'm seeing things aren't there. Hold up. What is that? And it's like they say it so low because they don't want you to hear it. And they're like, they're just throwing it past you. Like, wait a minute, hold up, pump the brakes. What did you just say?
Yeah, it's such an American sort of thing. Like, that doesn't happen in the rest of the world. You don't. So
my next question: you said you were in Belgium, right? And that you said, so you got to tell me, it's got to be way different there versus here, isn't it?
In some ways, yes, and in other ways, we're all human, so it's similar. I don't have a car here. I can get around anywhere I need to with my bike or a train, basically. It's the infrastructure and things are a lot different. It's a lot less car centric here than it is in the US. And
how's you guys' mental health care over there? Basically, is it a better system than ours? Obviously.
Well, that's so there's universal health care, right? It's a little bit different than like Medicaid for all or Medicare for all would have been, or whatever. It's kind of a complicated system, but it's very, very cheap and affordable and accessible. However, mental health care is difficult because there aren't a lot of psychologists, and most people want to see psychologists, right?
Yeah.
There's this idea, again, that very narrow focus, that there are specific people that you can see for these things, and there aren't very many of those people here, right? So,
Well, you figured they would take advantage of telebusiness now. I know a lot of people are doing it, everything via computers or phones these days now to reach out to these different people. And you figured
mhm,
they would capitalize on something like that because the ability to connect with people, the internet, Zoom, Teams meeting, how we're connecting now with StreamYard, things like there's different ways to connect with people on these things. And I'm surprised that they didn't integrate a lot of that. I know over here, there's so many different places that you can go
mhm,
and you hear all the advertisements all the time and see them online all the time at different places. You can go on and do television. Hell, you can even do doctor's visits over the phone, which
mhm.
for some of those, I'm like, how does that work? But okay.
Yeah, I think here it's a little more because, again, there it is more universal healthcare. I think there's a very clear, like, you go here and then you go here, and there's, streams and branches that people have gotten used to. But I also think it's partially due to, like, laws and regulations, right? It's
Yeah.
similar in the United States, right? I'm currently, I won't be in a little bit, but I'm currently still licensed in Wyoming. If I wanted to provide counseling to somebody, they would have to be in Wyoming, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't see somebody in Florida. They have similar laws here. You have to be registered and licensed in Belgium to see people in Belgium. So, I mean, we have all this wonderful technology that connects us, but then our laws and our paradigm and the way we see things hasn't quite caught up with that yet.
Yeah. No, I get that completely. And a lot of people are not tech savvy too, and it's a lot of the people are making those decisions. It's not to knock them; it's just to say that a lot of them don't understand a lot of how technology works these days, and the unlimited capacity of things you can do, and the ways you connect people,
Mhm.
and things like that. You can do like group sessions online with people, and that's interesting to hear though, because do you have to be certified to give advice as a psychedelic. Or
So
what is the correct term I'm thinking of for someone that does that kind of stuff in psychedelics and things?
yeah, there's no real credentialing in
Okay.
psychedelics right now.
Okay.
I basically have a yoga therapy certificate. I've got all my education in mental health, but I don't do clinical mental health anymore, so I don't
Yeah.
diagnose anybody. It
No, I
would
get that.
be, I guess the term that most people use is coaching, right?
Okay. Okay.
So that gives people access to, like, I can see anybody in the world, right?
Okay.
Anywhere you are, I can see you because I'm not giving you a medical treatment. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
okay. Okay. That makes sense now. All right. That makes sense. Yeah.
hmm
I,
So, which is why I decided, to kind of shift away from that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you're mostly doing psychedelic stuff now, and you're just like, well, and that's interesting to see, though. Because like you said, you're technically leaning them to, like, what did you say? You said they have like coach people that watch them, basically dose watchers or whatever that was. I missed that term when you said it.
It's okay. There are trip sitters who are
There you
people
go. That's what it
who
was.
just sit.
I'm like a
Yep.
sitter. I'm like, wait a minute. But it makes sense though. You think about it, because when you start dabbling in that stuff, man, if they get too intense, these guys are ready to go with what to do. Correct? Is that not what the trip sitter does?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have training who are trip sitters. Some trip
Yeah.
sitters don't have. Guides and facilitators definitely have training. Like, again, there's no, like, recognized certificate. I think in
Yeah.
Colorado
No.
and
Yeah, I get
Oregon
that completely.
they're starting to do that. But most people, if they're a trusted facilitator or sitter, is going to be able to tell you these are the things that I've, the substances that I've worked with myself, that I have a relationship with. These are the people that, I've learned from, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. And the other thing I want to ask you is, I did do a little digging on your site, and for what the number one thing I've been seeing lately, and it's the Reiki master. Like, you are
Mm.
probably the fifth or sixth Reiki master I've talked to. And it's like, what is level 3 though? That's my question to you. Is like, I've seen it, I'm like, level 3. I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck is level 3?
So Reiki trainings come in level 1, 2, and 3.
Oh,
The
okay.
first level is just you get the attunement so that you can help heal. You can use the energy
Yeah.
to heal. Level 2 is you basically learn distance healing, and then level 3 is when you learn how to give attunements to other people.
Yeah.
So I can teach and give that attunement to other people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I seen that and I was like, I said another Reiki master. I'm like, damn, man, I just keep finding all these people, man. It's so fascinating because each one of y'all are different, which is great because I love because everybody has a different, but I didn't know there was different levels to it. I was like, level 3. I'm like, wait a minute, what is level 3?
Yeah, and it's not something I do on its own, but I think having the ability to tap into that energy that I feel is healing and helpful helps me create that space and gives me another tool in my arsenal. I know a lot of people who come into psychedelics come from energy healing. They're like, I did all of this energy healing. Now I need to do, I want to go further into psychedelics. So they're familiar with it. It helps, I can use that with them to help give them a familiar sort of paradigm and work into that. So.
Well, that's so cool. You think about it, because if you go through your credentials and you start looking at stuff, you're like, damn, Liz knows like a lot of things. And it's great because you have all these different little pieces you can play off of and different ways to approach things and, help people. And it's like, you're not just one straight and narrow path. Well, this is only the specialty. No, Liz has got the whole MacGyver toolkit going on over there. She's ready to launch it as needed for the, which is so cool though. Because it's great to see that you're not just limiting yourself to one thing only. You're trying to do better yourself with all these different tools and things that you're learning along the way to better yourself, and you can better situationally help people in certain things and things like that. So
yeah, everyone's unique, and I like learning. It's kind of, my hobby. It's expensive sometimes, but it's good. But it's all in service to, making sure that I can help people the best way that I know how.
Well,
and
clearly you enjoy it too, because it's not just a hobby. It's something you're interested in, because and that's even better when it's something you really enjoy. Not only are you learning something beneficial to you and to what you're doing, you're also learning something that you're really enjoying at the same time. So everything you learn is something new, and you're fascinated. And it's great when you get fascinated in things, because that way you tend to pick up more stuff because you're really in tune to what's going on. You're like, hey man, I like this, I like that. Oh, okay, cool. Now, a question for you though: do you guys like have conventions for that, like psychedelic conventions, where everybody gets together and talks about like different things that they're all working on and share ideas, kind of like a think tank kind of thing, or is it just not a thing yet?
Yeah, no, there is. It's funny. I hear a lot of people be like, nobody knows about psychedelics. My LinkedIn profile is like 100% psychedelics almost, right? It's a niche community, but it's a very active community. So there are academic like conventions and conferences quite often because the research is kind of churning out. And then there are also like trauma and psychedelics conventions, summits, virtual conventions and things that are happening. I think it's starting to really pick up steam and become more mainstream. I don't know. I think the FDA, rejection of MDMA psychotherapy may or may not put a damper on that a little bit, but it's coming. There are a lot more than there were 2 or 3 years ago, right, when I wrote my thesis. So it happens.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. But I think we're in the right steps. So if they're starting to look at it, they denied a lot of things at first, and a lot of stuff got through eventually. So I'm hoping for the best at this point. I'm hoping they get it through. That way more people can experience these things, and we can educate more people and have more people get together and continue to grow the community even further. That way more people can enjoy the benefits of it and not be so much in the gray area about what it actually is,
Yeah,
because
and
you said,
access.
that too. You took the words right out of my mouth. Access to more things like that too. So, but I love it, Liz. I love it so much. Well, thank you so much for coming though today. Before we even get to this point, I love it. This is a great conversation. As soon as I saw yours, it's funny you say that, because I'm a part of another site where I match up with guests, and guess what? What Psychedelics is one of the ones guys I reached out to talk to about it. He said that he wouldn't be interested in doing the show, but he said the people that work directly with the customer, the people they work with directly would be. So I'm hopefully having one of them come on here soon enough, and I'll have to let you know when I get him closer to come on. But I was excited. I was like, man, I saw that, and then I saw yours, and I'm like, damn, dude, I'm winning on all levels today, man. I'm like, that's funny, because I was just looking at somebody's profile that said psychedelics in it, and here Liz is right here in front of me. The universe has put her in my path, and here we go. So it's so cool though. So Liz, you want to go ahead and plug some of your socials for everybody, where they can find you and things like that as we get ready to start wrapping up?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm on LinkedIn quite often, so I'm Eizabeth Shuler PsyD or Inner Evolution Coaching over there. I have a Substack, Inner Evolution Press, and you can find me there. I write about a lot of different things from spirituality to psychedelics and yoga and, all of that. I try and put resources and cool stuff there. You can find me at my website, innerevolutioncoach.com. And hopefully soon, I'm sort of in a pre-launch stage for a community, an integration community, where we're going to have weekly integration circles and mini courses and webinars and things all in one place so that we can have that community healing, which I think is really important in psychedelics. So keep a watch out for that. Hopefully that'll be coming up soon.
Guys, definitely keep a watch out, because if Liz says something about it, I am following her Instagram. I will post about it everywhere. I'll literally shoot it everywhere possible that people know. And then I'll make sure to tag the clip of you being in the show so they know exactly who we're referencing for it, because I'm down for it. Like I said, I'm down for helping out anybody when stuff like that comes out. If I can share it to everybody, I'll launch it out to everybody possible for you. And I know your website had a blog or something you can sign up for the email things. I already signed up for that too, because I'm like, oh yeah, I want to know more. So guys, if you want to go to her website, definitely all the links will be in the bio down below. Her Instagram's there. Give her a follow, guys. Let her know, hey, I saw you on Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm sure she'd love to hear it, And, maybe she consider doing a podcast sometime. You never know, maybe you can just educate people about how things work, even if it's just like 30-minute clips or 15-minit clips, daily dose of, your psychedelics or something like that. And just give people a little more insight on things that you're coming across and new things you're learning. And just a thought for you.
Thank you. Yeah. And just before you plug my Instagram too much, they're not super keen on psychedelics. So I'm not really on Instagram anymore.
Okay. No, you're good. That's why we're getting that out there now. Okay, yeah. She's more on Facebook.
Yes. LinkedIn and Facebook is where I'm at socially, just because psychedelics is a little bit censored in some places. So.
Oh, trust me. Have you ever been on TikTok? That's
No, because they wouldn't let me.
talk about sensory stuff. Talk about sensory things, because there it's like you can't say certain words and you have to code words, and it's like these are all big boy words we're using right now. This is a big boy app, but you think little kids join in. I get that, but these are real conversations adults have. And they don't like it. So like you'll hear sometimes, if you ever make it on there, you'll hear people like talking in code. It's because certain trigger words will get your account, we call it banana. So they'll basically, you lose your access to live and things like that. It's like we're having an adult conversation, TikTok. We're not doing anything wrong. Maybe you should look at it from the aspect of what we're talking about. We're trying to be educational, not harmful to each other here.
No, yeah, I think I made 2 posts and they permanently deleted my account and were like, no.
Oh, we've all been there. We know what it's like. Trust me. The early stages before Pete vs. Anxiety, I was out there doing some wild things, seeing what I could get away with, and I got banned like 3 or 4 times before I decided to shape up my attitude. And I was just having a good time, like you're out there having a wild time, we're playing into people's videos, saying stuff, and it's the things that you see on there. It's just amazing. Like these people make you laugh every day. And the comments, I think, are the greatest ones for some of these videos. You start reading them. And you're just like, oh my God. The real question becomes, how stupid is stupid? And then you're reading these answers. You're like, never mind. I think we just found the new winner right now, and it's just God. Anyways, but Liz, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you visiting us all the way from, overseas and everything like that. What time is it there, by the way? Just curiosity. So we know the time difference.
Yeah, it's almost 6:00.
Oh, okay, cool. It's only almost 11 here, or 12 Eastern Standard Time where we're at now. So, but all right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Again, Liz, once again, thank you so much for coming. It was great. I look forward to hearing more from you and see what you're up to. And guys, I'll keep you updated as we go, which site allows me to say anything about anything. But, you can find me as Pete vs. Anxiety on everything. I'm on Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, Rumble. I'm on everything. I'm like these everyone want me to be. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save somebody's life, or hell, you can even make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, hey, don't ask how your day is, but ask how your mental health is today.